you? I'm Cindy. I'm the instructor of this course, Intercultural Business Communication. Welcome to join us. Today we are going to look at Lesson 2, Intercultural Communication Barriers. And here is session 1. We will have 2 sections for this part. The first session is about the concept, intercultural communication barriers. And another section will be about how to overcome all these intercultural communication barriers. So now let's begin with today's class. Now, this is the content page. So in today's class, in the first session, we will cover 3 parts. The first part, we are going to study some very important keywords and concepts. And we will introduce barriers in intercultural communication. And then, briefly, we'll offer you the tips for overcoming intercultural communication barriers. But in another session, we will have further introduction. Okay, now let's begin with today's lesson. The first part is keywords and concepts. And I hope that you will spend some time studying all these keywords and key concepts. Now, let me ask you, do you know all these words? Values, beliefs, cultural generalizations, stereotypes, prejudice, bias, and discrimination, conflict. So these are the words that we are going to study today. And all these words, they are also important concepts. And some of them, they are barriers in intercultural communication. Barriers means that they will become the obstacles to people when they communicate cross-culturally. Okay, now, we know that communication is sometimes they are very difficult. And communication is often difficult simply because people think differently. Now, let me give you a daily example. When you communicate with another person, you think what is good and right, but if the other person thinks that is wrong and bad, then you will find that it will be very hard for you to proceed your communication, right? So why do you think so differently? That's because, okay, first one, personal values. When people's values are different, well, people can think very differently. Okay, so now let's look at what are personal values. Personal values evolve from circumstances with the external world and it can change over time. Okay, so what does it mean? It means that every one of us has our own values. Our values will tell us what is right, what is wrong. Integrity. Integrity in the application of values refers to its continuity. Persons have integrity if they apply their values appropriately, regardless being different from others. So what does it mean? When people have their own values, they think what is the right thing to do, then they keep doing this right thing, then this is this person's integrity. And personal values, so in a simple way, are related to choice. They guide decisions by allowing for an individual's choice to be compared to each choice's associated values. So what does it mean? It means that what people choose to do or what people choose to believe, all these things, all these decisions, choice are related to people's personal values. Personal values, they develop early in life, and sometimes personal values can be resistant to change. And our personal values are derived from those particular groups of citizens, such as culture, religion, or political party. However, personal values are not universal. Everyone's family, nation, generation, and historical environments help determine one's personal values. So it means that if the other person comes from another family comes from another nation, different generation, they can have their own personal values. And their values may be very different from your values. Therefore, there are no universal values. You cannot expect everyone else thinks the same as you do. That's why sometimes communication can be difficult, because what you say, what you think is very different from the other person. And when we communicate, we are communicating with ideas. We are communicating with our opinions. And basically, our values are behind all these ideas and opinions. Okay. Each individual possesses unique conception of values. Personal values indicate what a person thinks is right and thus chooses to do or to see things in those right ways. So here, a very quick question for you to review this important concept. What are your personal values? How do you communicate with people with different personal values from you? Okay, so for example, if you think hardworking is a good thing to do, but if someone has different thoughts, this person doesn't think that hardworking is a good thing to do, it's not the right thing to do, how do you communicate with this person in the workplace? And you may wonder, why? Hardworking, of course, is a very important thing, but believe me, in many parts of this world, hardworking is not a value in that society. Okay, enjoying the moment, enjoying the life can be more important than hardworking. So you have your own personal values. Other people have their own personal values. When your values are different, how can you communicate with them in the workplace? Please think about this. Okay, and perhaps we will have more discussion in the class. When we have a discussion face to face, we will discuss all these very interesting questions to improve, to increase your intercultural communication competence. Okay, now let's look at next concept. The next one is cultural values. Cultural values. Cultural values identify what should be judged as good or bad in society, in culture. Cultural values, basically, they are largely shared by the members in the culture. Okay, so these members can belong to the same groups or societies or cultures. So groups and societies or cultures have values that are shared by their members. The cultural values identify those objects, conditions, or characteristics that the members of society consider important or valuable. Okay, so these are cultural values. So when you grow up in Taiwan, we have Taiwanese cultural values. If you grow up in the United States of America, they have their own cultural values. And all the cultural values will tell people what is important in life, what is valuable in society. Okay, but the real situation is members take a part in the culture even if each member's personal values or cultural values do not entirely agree with each another. Okay, so in a society or in a culture, very often we will see mainstream cultural values, or we will have subcultural values. But no matter what kind of cultural values does the individual agree or not, the member, the society member or the group member participate in the society. So this reflects the individual's ability to synthesize and extract aspects valuable to them from the multiple subcultures they belong to. So what does it mean? It means that, for example, in the United States, the mainstream cultural values would be material comforts, wealth, competition, individualism, and religiosity. But for the group of members in this country, maybe not everyone agree to all these mainstream cultural values. They recognize them, but maybe some individuals or some social groups, they will have disagreements. But they still are part of the American culture. They are also members of American culture. Okay, the questions here. What are Taiwanese cultural values? How do you communicate with people having different cultural values? So in Taiwan, I believe we also have mainstream cultural values, what your school, your parents, or society expect you to do or to become. But what do you think? Do you agree with all these cultural values in this country? Or you have your own values? And what are you for and or against these domestic cultural values? And what do you think about other countries' cultural values? And can you communicate with people of different cultural values? Okay, next concept we are going to look at beliefs. Belief is a psychological state in which an individual holds a presupposition or premises to be true. So what does it mean? It means that belief is something that people believe or think to be true. However, in reality, what they think as true may not be true. We call it belief. Okay? Mainstream psychology and related disciplines have traditionally treated belief as if it were the simplest form of mental representation, and therefore one of the building blocks of conscious thoughts. So beliefs basically mean conscious thoughts. It means something which is constructed in people's minds. This belief, this thinking, all these thoughts may not be true to the reality. However, in people's mind, they believe this is true. Okay, so what do we call them? Beliefs. Now, here is the question for you to think. What are your political and religious beliefs? How do you communicate with people having different political or religious beliefs? Okay. Religious belief. Some people believe that there is God, but others may not believe there is God. And it's very, very hard to prove whether there is God or not, or there are gods or not. So when you believe, they are there. When you do not believe, they are not there. Okay, what do you think about this kind of statements? What are your beliefs? And how do you communicate with the people who have different beliefs from you? Think about this, okay? Next concept and term we are going to study is cultural generalization. Cultural generalizations. Cultural generalization indicates the result of generalizing or categorizing cultures. It explains or describes cultures or people of a culture according to their traits or features. Some empirical studies show the characteristics of culture. Okay, so this term, cultural generalization, basically comes from scholars or book authors' studies. And one of the famous study is synthetic culture, and we are going to study this in our course as well. Synthetic culture is developed by some scholars in Netherlands. Okay, so these are cultural generalizations from empirical studies, from book authors' observations, from scholars' research. They generalize different people or different cultures' characteristics and their features. Okay, so they try to help us to learn about different cultures in a more systematic way. And these are cultural generalizations. All right? Okay, so far we have already studied some concepts and terms which can tell us why people think differently. And when people think differently, sometimes communication becomes difficult, right? The very simple example is that no matter what kind of language you are using when communicating with another person, as long as you have different personal values or cultural values or different beliefs, you may find it difficult to communicate with the person. So we have to think about when we have a different point of view, perspectives, when we come from different cultures, how can we communicate with each other successfully? Now, next, let's look at some very strong negative views on culture. All these strong negative views on culture, they will keep people away from communicating successfully. They stop people from communicating successfully. And they may even cause conflicts cross-culturally. So here we are going to look at all these negative views, and they are also very serious barriers in intercultural communication.